Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're stepping back from the everyday noise for a really challenging philosophical exploration. We're looking at something deep within us, this powerful, maybe even destructive emotional connection we have to, to possessing what we think is the truth.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, our mission today isn't really about defining objective truth itself. That's a whole other mountain to climb, isn't it?
Yeah.
Instead, we're digging into what our sources are calling the pathos of truth.
The pathos of truth. Okay.
Yeah, it's about the feeling, the passion, the solemn weight people give it, that intense pride, even vehemence that comes with just claiming you possess some deep knowledge or insight. It's less about the cold fag and more about the very human experience of pursuing it.
Okay, right. And there's this core tension you mentioned, this constant contradiction in just being human.
Exactly. You've got the hard reality. Our lives are short. They're fleeting. We're mortal. But then running right up against that is this almost desperate desire we have for some kind of immortality.
Yeah. Like leaving a mark through being remembered, creating something lasting, or finding some timeless piece of knowledge. We're essentially trying to use ideas to outrun death.
Precisely. And that sets up the journey for today's deep dive. We'll start with something fairly common, maybe, like individual vanity, the drive for fame. Then we'll move towards the really intense isolation of the pure truth seeker, the philosopher figure.
Right, the extreme end of the spectrum.
And finally, we hit this cold, almost cosmic indifference from the universe itself. A perspective that kind of threatens to just flatten all that human effort, all that pride in knowing, making it seem, meaningless.
So it's a real existential wrestling match. The need to know versus the, maybe more fundamental, need to just keep living.
That's the core of it. It's a tension we'll keep coming back to.
Okay, sounds like quite the arc. Let's maybe start where most people can connect. This idea of fame, leaving a legacy, where does that fit in? #tag1. The paradox of fame and the cultural imperative.
Well, the sources jump right in with a pretty cutting take on why people chase fame. They pose the question, is fame really just the tastiest morsel of our self-love?
Whoa, that's blunt. It really deflates the whole idea of monuments and legacy, doesn't it? Reduces it straight down to ego, just feeding our vanity.
It does. It's designed to provoke, I think. But what's interesting is it also calls it a reward. So it's not just vanity. It implies it's a reward for something quite rare.
Okay, so it's not for everyone.
Apparently not. The sources link this drive for fame specifically to the rarest of men and to their rarest moments. It suggests that only a very few individuals reach a level of insight or feeling that sparks this almost overwhelming need for eternal recognition.
And these rarest moments, what are they like?
They're described as moments of sudden illumination. A kind of absolute certainty floods the person, bringing this intense happiness and belief in themselves. It's like in that instant, they feel almost godlike.
Stretching out an arm to create a universe, drawing light from within, that kind of feeling.
Exactly that kind of intensity.
Yeah.
And crucially, they become convinced that their unique feeling, their insight, is absolutely essential for all future generations. It's not just important to them. It becomes necessary for everyone, forever.
So it's like a personal lightning strike gets turned into a universal mandate.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, this certainty that which exalted him cannot, must not be withheld from posterity. They look ahead, imagine future people, and see their own fame as fulfilling a future need. It's a fascinating psychological leap, really.
A kind of emotional alchemy, turning a fleeting personal high into this perceived objective requirement. And that's the bedrock of culture.
Apparently so. And this leads straight into the moral dimension. We humans, we tend to watch things pass away with a bit of unease, don't we? A tree falling, a mountain eroding, there's a distress there.
Sure, a sense of loss, impermanence.
But what truly offends the moral person, according to these sources, is the thought that a moment of supreme universal perfection should vanish like a gleam of light.
So if something truly great happens, even for an instant, it feels fundamentally wrong for it to just disappear, like a betrayal of potential.
Exactly. It implies that all our striving might ultimately be for nothing if the peaks just vanish. And that offense, that sense of wrongness, fuels this deep, powerful cultural imperative.
The demand that the best things must last.
Precisely. The imperative demands that whatever has served to define or elevate the concept of man more beautifully, more perfectly, must be made eternally present. If a moment of greatness proves our potential, we can't let that proof just dissolve. We have to keep it around, always.
So all of culture, our art, our history books, our scientific discoveries, monuments, is all basically an answer to this demand. It's fulfilling this almost desperate human need to make the best parts of us last.
It seems that way. The sources describe culture as this chain of mountains, these great moments from the past, linking humanity across time. That chain is the tangible proof that the faith of those who wanted fame, who felt that moment of illumination, wasn't misplaced. Their intense personal pride gets transformed into our collective, supposedly eternal story.
The mountain range validating the single peak, as you said earlier.
Right.
Thinking about it like that, this conversion of ego into this drive for eternal preservation, it really forces you, the listener, to ask, why do we put so much energy into preserving the past? Is it purely objective history, or is it tangled up with that self-love, that need to see our own great moments or our civilization's moments reflected back as eternal?
Yeah, it really questions the whole project, doesn't it? Are we building archives for future generations, or are we essentially building elaborate mirrors for ourselves? What moments do you feel absolutely must be eternal? And maybe the harder question, how much of that feeling comes from seeing your own existence validated in them? #TED2, the great cultural struggle and the common man.
Okay, so this demand for eternity, born from the pride of these rare individuals, it's not exactly a smooth, peaceful process, is it? The sources talk about a terrible cultural struggle, a camp sparked by this very demand.
Not at all peaceful. Because if greatness demands eternity, then by definition, everything else becomes the opposition, gets cast as the enemy of that eternal preservation.
And everything else is basically most of life.
Exactly. It's the vast, overwhelming bulk of human experience. The customary, the small, the common. And these things, collectively, they shout no to this demand for immortality from the peaks. And it's not just passive resistance either.
It's actively hostile.
Yes, it's described as filling up the world like a heavy atmosphere. It hinders, it chokes, it darkens, it deceives. It's like this thick smog swirling around the great things, actively blocking their path to immortality.
So the ordinary everyday existence becomes this kind of environmental hazard for genius, because genius needs clarity and space, and the fog of the common just obscures everything.
That's the image, yeah. It's a suffocating environment. And the tragedy, the sources suggest, is that the road to immortality, this necessary chain-linking generations, has to pass through ordinary human brains.
And those brains belong to, well, us. Miserable, short-lived creatures, as the text rather brutally puts it.
Right. The common person is trapped by their immediate needs, food, shelter, just trying to keep destruction at bay for a little time. Their focus is overwhelmingly on survival, not on preserving some abstract intellectual or artistic peak from centuries ago.
They're just structurally unable to prioritize the grand eternal project over the immediate need to, well, live. They can't see this difficult relay race that greatness needs to run.
How could they? When your main concern is getting through the day, the week, the idea of preserving something for 1,000 years seems like an almost insane luxury, doesn't it? Their gloomy seriousness about practical life clashes head-on with the ambition for a legacy that ignores those practicalities.
But wait, doesn't that gloomy seriousness have its own truth? Isn't the immediate struggle for survival a profound reality in itself? The common person knows the brutal truth of the moment, maybe, while the great person is looking past it, which could seem like an evasion.
That's the inherent tension, absolutely. The common person values life intensely because it's so fragile and immediately threatened. But the person aiming for immortality, for greatness, has to reject that intense seriousness about survival.
They have to cultivate a kind of distance.
Exactly. The sources say they treated existence with Olympian laughter, or at least with lofty disdain. It's presented as a necessary defense. If they got bogged down in the common everyday seriousness, that heavy atmosphere would just swallow them whole.
Which leads to that really paradoxical lesson they supposedly left us. The person who lives life most beautifully is the one who does not esteem it, or at least doesn't esteem mere survival. Their greatness lies outside that calculus.
And even their death is framed ironically. The text asks, what was there in them to bury? It suggests only the dross, the waste, the pleonasm, the unnecessary, redundant bits of their mortal lives remained.
Pleonasm, like superfluous stuff.
Yeah, redundancy. The idea is the great person had already shed the merely mortal, the redundant survival bits, in favor of their single defining immortal moment of insight. The common person, in contrast, is seen as being made up entirely of that dross and pleonasm, just cycles of consumption and survival.
That's a harsh judgment, but it sets up the next stage, doesn't it? If common fame, dealing with the masses and that heavy atmosphere, is too messy, too compromised.
Then the boldest knights among these seekers of immortality, these addicts of fame, have to be the philosophers. They're the ones who try to sidestep the common cultural struggle entirely.
Because they're not looking for their name on a banner in the city square.
Right. They believe their recognition, their truth, belongs among the stars, maybe, on a constellation, not just in the history books. The common celebrity needs the crowd. The philosopher actively avoids it. Their path demands solitude, elevating their quest above that messy cultural camp. They're after a truth they see as necessary, not just something to be celebrated. #3, the unnatural pride and isolation of the philosopher, Heraclitus.
Okay, so now we get to the real extreme expression of this pathos of truth. The philosophical talent itself is described as incredibly rare, maybe the rarest thing, and also unnatural.
Right.
Why unnatural?
Well, it seems unnatural because it pushes against the grain of basic survival instincts, doesn't it? Against the social, communal drives that help most creatures, including us, get by.
To analyze the web, you have to detach yourself from it.
Exactly, and that detachment demands this almost superhuman defense. The sources say the wall of the philosopher's self-sufficiency must be made of diamond to avoid being shattered, because everything human nature, social pressures, even the physical world seems to push against them.
So their whole project is inherently isolating, maybe even self-destructive in a way. It's the hardest path, the most obstructed one, and yet they're described as being the most confident they'll reach their goal. That seems like a huge contradiction.
It is stunning, isn't it? Their confidence apparently comes from this radical certainty about where they stand. Not physically, but metaphysically. They stand on the extended wings of all ages.
Meaning?
Meaning their philosophical thinking deliberately ignores the present, the momentary. They believe they possess the truth, and time itself, the whole wheel of history, can roll on, but it can never escape that truth. If you've glimpsed something eternal, your own brief life starts to seem, well, secondary to the eternal necessity of your insight.
And that level of confidence, that claim to possess eternal truth, breeds this extraordinary, almost frightening level of pride, a regal self-esteem, the text calls it.
Which is where the figure of Heraclitus comes in. He's presented as the absolute archetype of this, the hermit philosopher in the temple at Ephesus.
Right. The sources say we probably couldn't even imagine such boundless conviction, such certainty that you alone are the fortunate wooer of eternal truth, if history didn't give us examples like him.
He really is the limit case. He rejected society, saw people and their customs as beneath his notice, just noise.
He built his own internal world he's called a star without an atmosphere.
Yeah, that image is powerful. His gaze is turned inward. From the outside, he appears cold, dead, maybe just glancing outwards for show. It's his immense, chilling pride that lets him just turn away from the waves of illusion and folly that make up most human life. He's completely self-contained.
And he retreated, right, to the temple of Artemis.
Yes, scorning the Ephesians when they asked him to help with their laws. He became a genuine misanthrope, a hater of mankind. The text suggests he was only slightly less alien in a remote shrine surrounded by cold stone architecture than he was among actual people. Just utterly out of step with everyday existence, a total outlier.
And the core of his knowledge, his great discovery,
was himself. His famous declaration, "It was myself which I sought and explored." He felt he had no need for other people, not even to gain knowledge. He wasn't interested in what otherwise men were debating. His own consciousness, his own being, was the entire universe he needed to map.
So he saw himself as the ultimate fulfillment of that Delphic command, know thyself, but on a level most people couldn't even grasp. He was plumbing his own depths, like consulting an oracle.
Exactly. And the wisdom he found there, he presented as eternally valid, something worthy of interpretation for millennia, like the cryptic pronouncements of the Sibyl. He genuinely believed the deepest truths of the cosmos resided within his own self-awareness.
That's an almost terrifying level of self-belief. It let him proclaim his wisdom without laughter, without ornaments, but with foaming mouth, utterly convinced it would echo for thousands of years. It's like an act of pure intellectual force.
And this is where we see the crucial split between common fame and this philosophical necessity. Heraclitus openly scorned fame among mortals who were continually passing away. That kind of fame was for poets, entertainers maybe, too common. His fame, he felt, mattered to humanity, not to him personally.
Okay, so that initial driver, the self-love we started with, it gets completely transformed.
It seems so. It's entirely consumed by the love of truth. And it's the truth itself, not his personal ego, that dictates that the immortality of humanity requires his insight. It's not about him needing immortality for himself, the man Heraclitus.
He becomes the vessel. His personal existence merges entirely with the eternal truth he believes he carries.
It's the absolute peak of that intellectual pride, isn't it?
Yeah.
The pathos of truth taken to its logical, albeit terrifying conclusion.
Okay, that is a truly dizzying height of human pride. That diamond wall around the philosopher seems unbreakable. But now the sources pivot hard. They force us to zoom way, way out, from the peak of human philosophical confidence to this vast, cold, utterly indifferent view of the cosmos.
Right. This is the moment the pathos of truth runs headlong into its ultimate challenge. Cosmic reality, or at least a certain perspective on it. It's a forced dose of intellectual humility.
How do they frame it?
Through this chilling little parable, this thought experiment, imagine some detached, maybe heartless, cosmic observer looking at all of human history, all our philosophy, all that Heraclean pride, and just noting, almost casually. Once upon a time, in some out-of-the-way corner of that universe, there was a star upon which clever beasts invented knowing.
Oof. Clever beasts, and out-of-the-way corner. The scale is just devastating. It immediately strips away any sense of human importance, doesn't it? Our entire history, culture, science, philosophy, reduced to a footnote.
And not just any footnote, the most arrogant and mendacious minute of world history, but nevertheless only a minute. It frames our entire existence as this brief, insignificant flicker of self-important consciousness in a forgotten corner of nowhere.
The description, clever beasts, is brutal too. Not noble seekers, just animals who got a bit too smart for their own good. It implies knowing isn't some grand purpose, just maybe a trick, a survival tool, or even a kind of planetary illness.
And the ending for these clever beasts, swift and final. Nature takes a few breaths, the star cools, and the beasts die.
And the punchline.
They spent their whole minute boasting about how much they understood, only to discover right at the end, to their great annoyance, that they had understood everything falsely.
Wow, so all that certainty, all that diamond-walled confidence built on ultimately flawed, temporary knowledge, and they die cursing truth.
That's the final act. The knowing animal realizes its pursuit of knowledge led only to the truth of its own cosmic irrelevance and error. A truly pathetic end.
And this whole scenario, this parable, it's presented as what would happen to us, to humanity, if we were only knowing animals.
Yes. If pure, objective, cosmic truth, the kind indifferent to our survival, were all we had, it would simply drive us mad. It would lead straight to despair and destruction. Why? Because that truth would reveal that we are eternally condemned to untruth.
Meaning
the very thing the philosopher like Heraclitus prides himself on finding objective, eternal truth is actually a self-destructive illusion when seen from this vast cosmic distance. Or perhaps that we're fundamentally incapable of grasping it without being destroyed by it.
Back on you, why don't we all just collapse into nihilism then, if the ultimate truth is so bleak?
Because, the sources argue, what's actually appropriate for human beings isn't that annihilating objective truth. It's belief in attainable truth. Or maybe more accurately, belief in the illusion which draws near to man and inspires him with confidence. We need the comforting lie.
We're sustained by necessary deception then. Nature itself helps us out.
It seems so. Nature actively hides most things from us, even the closest things, like our own bodies. We only have this superficial consciousness of them, which is really just the tip of a huge iceberg of biological processes we don't perceive or control.
Right, I don't consciously manage my liver function.
Exactly. And this leads to the fundamental trap. We're locked inside this subjective chamber of consciousness. Nature, the sources say, threw away the key.
We can't get out. We can't access that objective cosmic viewpoint directly.
Apparently not. And maybe it's for our own good, because if we could, it might just break us. So that fatal curiosity of the philosopher, that proud urge to find the absolute truth, suddenly looks incredibly risky. It could be an evolutionary mistake.
Okay, so this sets up the final, unavoidable showdown in these sources. Art versus knowledge. The philosopher, pushed by this fatal curiosity, wants to peek through a crack in that chamber of consciousness, right? To see what's really underneath it all.
Yes. They desperately want to know the real foundation of existence, even if they suspect it might be horrifying.
And the suspicion is, what? That it's not reason or virtue holding things up.
The suspicion is that maybe man, in his ignorance, happily dreaming his conscious dreams, is actually sustained by something greedy, insatiable, disgusting, pitiless, and murderous. The raw, amoral, brutal energy of life itself. That the life force, stripped bare, is terrifyingly ugly.
And there's that incredibly vivid metaphor for this.
The tiger, yeah.
Yeah.
Man is pictured as hanging in dreams on the back of a tiger. We're literally being carried along by this pure, violent, indifferent, predatory power, the engine of existence, but we're blissfully unaware, dreaming sweet dreams, safe inside our heads, asleep while riding a monster.
That image really lands, and it perfectly sets up the clash between these two big human drives, the pathos of truth and the simple will to live.
Exactly. Because if we are sustained by this necessary illusion, this dream that keeps us safe from the terrifying reality of the tiger, then you get two completely opposite philosophical commands.
The first one comes from art.
Yes. Art's call is straightforward, pragmatic. Let him hang. Just let the dream continue. Allow the illusion, because that's what makes life bearable. It's what allows society, culture, everything to actually function and continue. Art becomes the beautiful, necessary veil thrown over the abyss.
But the philosopher, driven by that pathos of truth, that intense pride in knowing the real deal.
The philosopher shouts, "Wake him up." They demand the terrible cosmic truth, no matter the cost. Because for them, possessing truth is the absolute highest value, even if that truth is painful or destructive. A harsh awakening is seen as better than a comfortable lie.
But then there's a final twist, a deep philosophical irony here.
There is. The sources point out that even as the philosopher thinks they're the one shaking the sleeper awake, demanding cold, hard reality, the philosopher themselves is sinking into a still deeper, magical slumber.
How so? What are they dreaming of?
They're not immune to illusion either. The philosopher starts dreaming their own highly specialized saving illusions, maybe dreams of eternal ideas, abstract concepts, or perhaps dreams of their own immortality as the unique discoverer and carrier of truth.
So the pathos of truth, which started as this quest for objective reality, kind of loops back on itself. It becomes its own necessary deception, allowing the philosopher to actually survive the potentially crushing results of their own inquiry.
Precisely. They find beauty and solace in these eternal ideas, these abstract truths, even if, from that ultimate cosmic perspective, they might also be illusions. They need to believe in the ultimate value and attainability of knowledge, which might itself be an illusion just to keep searching.
You have to trust the dream to keep searching for the reality outside the dream. It's a total paradox.
It really is. And this leads directly to the final decisive verdict in the sources, the argument that reveals the true power dynamic in human life, maybe in nature itself.
Why?
Art is more powerful than knowledge.
Why?
Because it desires life, whereas knowledge attains as its final goal only annihilation.
Wow. So knowledge, when pursued to its absolute cosmic limit, is ultimately self-destructive. It strips away the necessary illusions, the dream on the tiger's back, the self-love, the pride, and just reveals the pitiless, unbearable reality.
That's the implication. If we truly possess that pure, unfiltered knowledge, we'd probably just cease to function, die of despair or horror. Art, understood as the capacity for the beautiful lie, the life-sustaining dream, emerges as the real engine of survival. It ensures we keep going by preventing us from staring too long into the abyss.
That's a radical reordering of values. We usually place science, factual knowledge at the pinnacle, but this argues that art, the ability to create necessary life-affirming deceptions, is actually the more fundamental imperative for survival.
It suggests our basic will to live ultimately overrides, and perhaps must override, our pathos of truth, our drive to know at all costs.
So the real struggle isn't maybe between the great thinkers and the common masses. It's inside the thinkers themselves, between that fatal curiosity pulling them towards the abyss and their equally human need to create beauty, to create illusions that let them and us keep living. #outro. Well, we have definitely covered some vast and frankly intense territory today. We've traced this pathos of truth all the way from its roots in maybe simple vanity right up to its collision with cosmic indifference.
Yeah, we started with that fierce individual pride, that demand for eternal recognition, for a fleeting moment of insight. We saw how that creates a culture, but also sparks this fierce struggle against the sheer weight of the ordinary.
Then we followed the path to its extreme. The isolated philosopher like Heraclitus, convinced his own existence was necessary for humanity's future. So much pride there.
So much. Only to then have that pride completely undercut by the cosmic perspective. The view of humanity as just clever beasts living out an arrogant and mendacious minute, ultimately doomed to curse the very truth they sought.
It leaves us with this really tragic split, doesn't it? Our deep desire for knowledge, the thing we pursue with such passion and pride, seems to lead us towards despair and destruction if taken to its absolute end.
Yet, our fundamental need to survive, to continue living, seems to be met only by embracing necessary illusion by art, by the dream that lets us ride the tiger without looking down. The sources seem to land on this radical conclusion. Art's drive for life wins out over knowledge's endgame of annihilation.
The philosophical quest might be valuable then, but maybe only if it remains wrapped in its own kind of protective illusions.
That seems to be the uncomfortable takeaway.
And that really is the final provocative thought we want to leave you, the listener, with today. It demands you reflect on your own drive for knowledge, for understanding. If our greatest moments of insight are maybe just strategies for securing immortality, for feeding our self-love, and if ultimate truth itself might lead only to annihilation, then how do you reassess the value of knowledge, especially in a world that might only keep going because of beautiful, necessary deceptions?
Yeah, how do you reconcile that deep need to seek truth? It feels so fundamentally human, doesn't it? With the equally deep need to simply live your life, which might depend on accepting, even embracing certain sustaining lies. Which drive, in the end, is more powerful, more defining for you? The drive to know or the drive to live?
It's a profound conflict. We encourage you to think about that. What stands out to you as perhaps the greatest, most necessary illusion in your own life? Thanks for diving deep with us today.